This episode's character, Lot, son of Haran, nephew of Abraham, entrepreneur, hostage, widower. We meet him in Genesis chapters 11 through 19. Lot prospers alongside Abraham until he makes a pivotal choice to live closer to the wicked city of Sodom. He's rescued twice, at a terrible cost. Brought to you by Fortt Media, this is Character Study with Jon Fortt and David Tieche. Download free resources at bible.fortt.com. Welcome once again to Character Study. I am Jon Fortt here with Dave Tieche, and we are taking a look at some people, some characters in the Bible, what they reveal about God, about our relationship with God, what they might reveal about us. Now, Dave and I go way back, and by way back, I mean we're best friends since college, about, I don't know, roughly 30 years ago, plus minus, yeah. Dave, you're a pastor. I'm a journalist. We're both striving to follow Christ, and so this has led to some interesting conversations that we want to share and maybe engage people in thinking about the Bible and our pursuit of God through the lens of people.
Yeah.
So we've been looking at Abraham, and not just Abraham, but there's lots of people around Abraham, Sarah, Hagar, and actually today we are zeroing in on what I think is an important and interesting character, Lot. And Lot is Abraham's nephew. And so to sort of recap and help me out here, Dave, we encounter Abraham in, I don't know, around Genesis 11.
It starts in 11 and goes into 12.
Yeah. And he's a guy, God says, leave your father and your land and go to a place I'll show you. I'm going to make you pretty awesome. And Abraham was like, okay, and goes and does it, which is remarkable because this is before there was any Bible or, a whole lot of, track record with God. There weren't a whole lot of stories.
Or any GPS. So he doesn't even know where he's going.
Not really. So he's just sort of wayfinding out there with God.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that comes up as part of Abraham's story that has become one of those popular things that appears in the children's Bible and everything is Sodom and Gomorrah. And people know all the people there were bad in various ways, though there are certain ways that tend to stand out in people's minds. And people know that Lot's wife, as they were leaving the bad place, longed for it, turned around, looked at the destruction, and turned into a pillar of salt, which is not a great way to go, I imagine. But
no, probably not.
In Sunday school, I was always like, wow, that, like before the Thanos snap, there was Lot's wife. Man, cold. Like God means business. If he says don't look, don't look. It's like Medusa, Thanos, all that stuff wrapped up into one.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I didn't get the Greek reference there, but it's like turning to stone, right?
Yeah.
So what? Yeah, and it's so unique in the story. Like no one else gets turned into salt in the rest of the biblical narrative.
Yeah, it's like what's
going on?
Yeah. There's that horror movie out where you're not supposed to make noise. Right.
Oh yeah, it's with Emily Blunt and John Krasinski.
John Krasinski, yeah. And so it's like, oh, don't look, don't make noise, don't, it's that whole. It's very.
I would be the first to go in that movie franchise. I'd be dead in seconds.
And that's to me what that whole Lot's wife situation makes you think of. Your home, and sadly, as we're having this conversation in 2025. Areas of Los Angeles and California, the state where you are undergoing destruction. And we've all imagined, oh my goodness, if you're seeing your home being destroyed and you're having to walk away into an uncertain future, it's hard not to look back, right? Even though there were things wrong with your home, with your neighborhood, whatever, you don't want to see it go up in flames. So I always, as a kid, I had some sympathy for Lot's wife.
Sure.
Looking back, even though, Anyway, so that's one of the side stories as we're learning about Abraham. And Lot is a key piece of this. And Lot, I mean, tell me your thoughts on Lot. He first appears, I believe, Genesis, well, pretty soon after we meet Abraham, but he first becomes an actor in things around Genesis 13 when he and Abraham separate.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. In Genesis 12, God calls Abraham to leave his country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I'll show you. So he's supposed to leave his family. And the very next, sentence is, so Abram went, and Lot went with him. And so you're like, wait, I thought you were supposed to leave your family and your people and kind of strike out with your own family, break the family lineage that we've already talked about. And then Lot goes with him. And then Lot's going to be kind of a pain in his butt, or put another way, he's going to be like a foil, like a negative example of Abraham for the rest
Now,
of the time.
Before we turn Lot into a uh, a lesson, tell me about what we know about Lot as a person. So he's a nephew. He's Abraham's brother's son,
Right.
and he must be somewhat industrious, right? Because he's like, "Oh, where are we going, Uncle Abraham?" Like, we okay, we're gonna go make a name for ourselves, get rich, expand
Yeah.
our herds, what have you. Um, so, what is it that leads to the conflict between their interests?
Well, I mean, the very next chapter in Lot, in Genesis 13, Abraham and Lot, they start to travel, and then Abram becomes very wealthy. Abraham, I'm not sure if he's just super smart or super industrious. God blesses him, some combination, but he becomes very, very wealthy. And then they keep moving. They have their flocks. Remember, these are nomadic kind of shepherd folk. They have a lot of livestock, and his flocks and his herds. And I think flocks has to do with sheep, and herd is a cattle word. And tents, this is where they live, right? So, and it says, but the land could not support them for both Abraham and Lot. So they have to separate because there's not enough like resources for all of their stuff. And there's quarreling, there's fighting goes on between Abraham's family, his herders, all his people, and Lot's people because they're fighting over these resources. And there's other people living in the land. So it feels like there's a sense of kind of a resource scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
But Abraham, who is in this case, does something pretty righteous. He's like, look, we can't fight. We're close relatives. We can't have this. Is not the whole land before us. Like, we can go anywhere we want. And then he says, so let's split, let's separate. And he goes, if you go left, I'll go right. If you go right, I'll go left. But you get first choice. And then this is, I think, a little telling. And he says, Lot looked around and saw the whole plain of Jordan was well watered, like the garden of the Lord, the Garden of Eden, like the land of Egypt. And then there's a parenthetical. This is before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, right? But there's this plain, and it's beautiful. And he says, so Lot chose for himself the whole plain of the Jordan and set out toward the east, and they parted company. So Abraham is left with like this deserty, not his ideal place. And Lot, immediately his eye is turned toward the green, lush garden state of this plain.
Now, don't call it the Garden State, right? Because I'm in New Jersey, and you seem to be equating the area around Sodom and Gomorrah with the Garden State.
No, but no, garden in this place, in this turn, John, is a wonderful, lush term. I mean, this is where rivers flow. This is where life is. The Garden of Eden, when you hear a Garden of Eden, this is supposed to be like, oh, this is like paradise. This is great. So this, in not Garden State like the movie by Zach Braff, or Garden State like New Jersey, but like just like this is supposed to evoke in us. This is a wonderful place. And his eyes turn toward it because, of course, it is.
Well, and I think it's interesting that the Bible says his eyes turned toward it. Now, in the same passage where Sodom and Gomorrah are mentioned, haven't been destroyed yet, his eyes turned toward it. So there's something about what this place represents, and something about Lot and his character where, hey, this looks good. And I am attracted to what looks good. And so I want that for myself.
Yeah. It feels like it feels to me like this is a direct echo back to garden. They even put the word Garden of Eden. He sees it, he desires it, and he takes it. That's exactly the same pattern that we see with Eve and Adam. You know, in the garden, they see something, they're not really supposed to have it. They desire it and they take it. So that's the model. And Lot begins to walk into this because it looks good.
Well,
And then Abraham has to leave, and he's left with like, well, what am I going to do, right? And then he walks, finds some stuff, and then God shows up, and actually in another vision shows up with Abraham and says, "This is your land. This is your land, and I'm going to be with you. Go walk it." And so Abraham's like, "Well, I guess this is where I'm going to be, but as long as God's with me, I'm going to be okay."
So there seems to be, to me, a character contrast here.
Yeah.
So there's a resource problem. And Abraham begins a negotiation with Lot from a seeming position of weakness. When, like with my two boys, when they're gonna like share a piece of cake or something,
Yeah.
I always have to be like Solomon about it. It's like, okay,
I'll cut it and one of you would choose it.
No, it's like one of you cuts it. And the other one chooses first.
Oh, that's smart. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that makes the first person really try to cut it exactly in half, because he knows that if he cuts one piece bigger, that's the piece his brother's going to take.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But so you sort of, as a dad with kids, you sort of have to think about, well, kids want the best piece for themselves.
Yeah.
And Abraham, rather than set this up where he's like, okay, well, you choose the dividing line in this land, and then I choose first, or I choose the dividing line and then you choose first. He goes, no, you choose the dividing line and you choose first.
This is a sign of incredible trust in, and I think Yahweh's provision, that somehow, I don't know where Abraham got this from, but he trusts. And it's a sign of open-handedness. It's a sign of not grabbiness. You're 100% right.
Is it trust in God, or is it naivete?
Oh man, there's a fine line, isn't there?
Does Abraham, even though he's got a lot of stuff, maybe naivete is wrong, but even though he's got a lot of stuff, does he not value the stuff as much as some people?
Here's why I don't think it's naivete. Because I think the biblical narrative is getting us to march through some stuff. So the first thing that happens is God shows up and says, "I'll be with you." Then God shows up and says, "This is your land." Then there's a famine. They go to Egypt. Abraham starts taking matters into his own hands, like we talked about, right, with Sarah. And God shows up and blesses him and solves the situation that Abraham got himself into because he didn't trust God, right? He didn't trust what God was saying. So I think what the narrative is trying to get us to see is there's a march in Abraham toward trust, and he stumbles along the way, as all of us do, but he's starting to learn a little bit. So in this, Genesis 13, he's being open-handed because he's like, look, even though there's a famine, God still provided for me. So no matter where my land is, it doesn't have to be green and lush. Something's going to happen. I can just be open-handed. God's going to provide. And later on, of course, this is going to be a callback. The people of Israel are going to be in the desert, and they're not going to have green, lush things, and God's going to provide for them. But that's much further in the story. But the people reading this are those people, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we are. Naivete, I think, is. I think it's dismissive of the narrative of what we're supposed to learn from Abraham's character.
Fair. I'll throw that one away. But I will still dispute this one point with you. I don't think Abraham's naive, but I do think he's a bit anti-materialistic. He's a bit, I think he doesn't value stuff as much as Lot does. Abraham has a lot of stuff, and
he does.
He's got a lot of stuff. He's looking to, be a good steward of his stuff, it seems, but his priority seems to be doing some version of the right thing. Certainly when it comes to God, he doesn't always get it right the first time, but his priority seems to be doing the right thing by God and by people. And so in this situation where he could really disadvantage himself, he's like, yeah, you know what? Family is more important than money. We shouldn't fight them. So let's take the money thing off the table. You
Right.
take what you want.
You take it
And
all. Yeah. You take it all. Yeah. Well, yeah, we're going to get into that because actually this is a core tenet. The Bible is going to build on this, but this theme, and this is what I did part of my master's thesis on, was this next moment that we're going to encounter. And there's this definition. There's this weird word that we don't use, but now we use it because of a movie that just made like $1 billion. The movie Wicked that just came out, right? We don't use the word wicked that much, right? When I hear the word wicked, I think Wicked Witch of the East, you know, that kind of thing. But there's a juxtaposition in the Bible of the term wicked and the term righteous. And the definition by a guy named Bruce Waltke, who wrote a series of commentators, and my own seminary professor and cohort leader, Gary Breshears, he put it this way. He said, wicked people disadvantage others to advantage themselves, and righteous people disadvantage themselves for the sake of others. And we're about to see something really profound that's going to happen because the city of Sodom, there's a word that's used in the scriptures. And it's there in Genesis 13, and it's wicked.
Let me poke at that definition a bit, because I think you said righteous people disadvantage themselves to advantage others.
Correct.
There has to be some standard, though, right? Because it's not just about relationship with others. There's some idea of correctness, of truth or justice embedded in righteousness. The idea that you are right, and it's 100%. Not. To me, if you disadvantage yourself to advantage somebody who is wicked, is that righteous? Because, and we're going to come to this later with Lot, there's a situation where Lot offers, arguably, to disadvantage himself in order to advantage someone who's wicked. And it's like, no. That's actually not a righteous thing that you're about to do. That's not how we're going to get out of this situation.
And that's going to get us to the second part of the word. Righteousness is one part of the word, but in the Hebrew scriptures, righteousness almost always goes with another word called justice. And justice and righteousness go together. And righteousness is not just about relationships. Like you said, it's not just about relationships with others. It's about doing what's right in the eyes of the Lord, or being having the same character as God, doing what's right. I put it this way to my kids: justice and righteousness are loving what's right, they're doing what's right, and when things are broken, you try to help set things right. So that's the way that justice and righteousness are looked at. And as we delve into the story, you're going to see how important that is for God and how important it is for Abraham, because what happens next is that they separate. There's all sorts of stuff that happens. There's the covenant of circumcision. And Abraham's like, no, I got the rainbow. And then the three visitors.
Well, so one more thing that I hope to pick out in this story in Genesis 13, though. And that's sort of after they make their choices on who's going where. Then you sort of take the wrapping paper off and you look inside. Yeah. And inside Abraham's box.
The big shiny box or the small box. A Lot chose the big shiny box, and inside was not the best present.
Inside Abraham's box is God's promise, right?
Yeah.
So after Lot was separated from him, Yahweh said to Abraham, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward.
Everything the light touches.
Right? He gets that, Mufasa moment.
Yeah, it's true.
Lot, however, right? What does it say? Traveled east.
In verse 12.
Yeah.
Lot lived among the cities. Yeah.
Now the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinners against Yahweh. Okay, so he's gone to this place that looked good. He lifted up his eyes. That looks like the best. But the people there were horrible.
Yeah, really bad.
And almost immediately, at least in narrative terms, things start to go wrong with Lot's choice, right?
Yeah. Which, this is part of this. It's just like, So Lot chose with his eyes. He saw, desired, and took, and then bad things happened. And that's kind of the thing. Meanwhile, Abraham did what was like kind of daring, which is I'm just going to trust God to provide for me, and God does, you know.
Now break down Genesis 14 for me, because this is where we end up with Melchizedek, and there's this war, kidnapping, this high priest, which is a bit confusing because it's like I wasn't aware that there was a church or any kind of order. But here's this high priest who shows up, and this is a very popular passage with pastors because tithing arrives for the first time, right, in Scripture. And then there's another sort of values contrast between
100%.
Abraham's choice and
Yeah.
Lot's choice, because we have these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We start to see there's these kings, and it feels to me like almost like feudal society as I read the story. You know, when you think about like tribalism or like shoguns, you know, these kind of rival king states, you know, and they're fighting for resources, and they're fighting among themselves. And you see there's some juxtaposition, as you said. And again, I think the Bible is trying to get us to see from the beginning of the pages of Scripture all the way through with Noah, through Abraham, through the rest of the stories, through Moses. You're going to see the option that we have as human beings, that we can be faithful covenant partners and walk with God, or we can turn our back on God, do whatever we want, and unleash whatever hell we can on this earth, you know? And so that's just the choice that we have as humans. So you've got this juxtaposition between these two kings, the king of Sodom and the king of Salem. Now, what's weird about this is we lose this, but the word for city here is Jerub. So it's Jerub Sodom and Jerub Salem. So you're going to see where this is going. One is the king of Jerub Sodom, and the other is Jerub Salem, right? Jerusalem. Or Jerusalem. The king of Sodom turns his heart against Lot. He does some stuff. They seize the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they carry away Lot and his possessions since he's living there. So they go into that area, and then so so Abraham now has a problem. His nephew Lot's been kidnapped, his whole family, and there's this big battle. And then Melchizedek, who's the king of Salem, somehow, and this is the craziest, I don't understand this. He's a priest of the God Most High. So somehow Melchizedek has knowledge of the same Yahweh, the creator God, that Abraham does. We're not exactly sure why, but he is aligned with Yahweh, and he actually blesses Abraham. And so there's some sort of connection between them spiritually.
Let's go back to this battle, though, just to sort of understand it. So there's Chedorlaomer, I don't know, Cheddar, King, and there's some kings aligned with him.
Yep.
And then there's the king of Sodom, and some others, the king of Gomorrah. They're two different kings, but they're aligned. And Chedorlaomer's forces, king of Sodom and Gomorrah, and their forces go against each other. Clearly, Lot lives in the area of Sodom and Gomorrah. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, their group loses.
Yeah.
So Chedorlaomer carries off, as you do at the time. You win. You loot their stuff. You carry off their people to your land, right? So this battle has gone, this war has gone poorly for the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and their alliance. They've lost. Chedorlaomer takes Lot and all of his stuff because he won. Someone escapes, tells Abraham, hey, your nephew got jacked. His stuff, him, all gone. And as you're saying, Abraham goes off, rides to war. Now, this is pretty crazy.
Pretty intense, right?
Yeah, because this was like 4 kings against 5.
Right.
And one group loses. And then after all that's over, Abraham rides in and reverses the outcome of this war.
Right.
And gets Lot and his stuff back. What this makes me think of, we're talking about character. we're talking about, okay, well, why is Abraham rich? It seems like Lot is viewing riches and prosperity through his eyes. And whatever he's doing with the money, I don't know, but he's not building up a strong Department of Defense, right? He's not building military capability.
Right,
Whatever
right.
it is he's valuing, I don't know, but it's not, he doesn't seem to have a well-rounded view of what's needed to both build up his wealth, protect his wealth and his values. However, Abraham, and you can attribute this all different ways. We don't have the information about how much of this is one of those Gideon situations where God supernaturally takes, Abraham's small and weak group. We don't get that. But I guess what we're left with outside of a miraculous explanation is Abraham knew how to fight.
Well, not just that. It says that he's got 318 trained soldier men in his household. That's not a small trained, which that's a military word, right?
Yeah.
So these are that's not nothing. 318 private armed guards in the ancient world can go a long way. And then he pursues them, divides them. So there's some military strategy here, and they win. And it says they routed them. They routed. So that means they super duper won.
Right. So this is not Abraham in a situation where I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like he's got trained, invested in military capability for whatever situation might happen to arise.
Yeah.
And I guess we're left to surmise that the level of training and the level of investment that Abraham has made is world class, because unless we're told that they had no business being able to win based on their own human preparation, I guess we've got to conclude, well, it was within the realm of possibility, right? Because we're not told that this is just completely miraculous. So it's an interesting, I think, exposure of a values difference in, I'll call it stewardship, which might be an unpopular word to use, at least in some quarters, talking about military and defense capability. But Abraham is not only being blessed with resource, but he's thinking about how do I protect and be a good steward of what God has given me, so that any wicked person can't just ride in and take it for themselves.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It goes beyond. It feels like deeply relational and capable in a way that Lot's not. To your point, and it's incredibly valuable. His service, because he basically, like you said, reverses a fight or a war or a battle. I don't know, or a siege. I don't know what the right word is. It reverses it, and then
9 kingdoms involved. I think that's a war.
Yeah, Which is like this. It feels to me like 9 tribal gangs or 9 tribal city states. But this, I mean, this is. It feels very medieval to me, like feudal. But then what happens after that is there's a moment where the kings come to Abraham, and they basically, I guess, say thank you, right? I mean, this is like you just reversed a really bad outcome with your private army. Mm-hmm. This is unprecedented.
So this is actually the first time that Abraham has a hand in saving Sodom and Gomorrah.
Right. And you've got 2 kings, and their 2 kings come and they respond in very different ways to Abraham. You've got Melchizedek, the king of Salem, and the king of Sodom, who is unnamed. I believe he's unnamed, right? And I think that's a point. Melchizedek, again, somehow, we don't know how, he knows Yahweh, and he actually says, "Blessed be Abraham by Yahweh, who is the creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to your God, Yahweh. He delivered your enemies into your hand." It's clear that God's hand's on you. And then Abraham's like, "You're right." And he actually gives him, the king of Salem, a tenth of all his stuff as a form of blessing to the king of Jerusalem, Salem. And then the king of Sodom has his chance. And he's like, "You know what? Give me the people that you captured. You keep their goods. Keep all the spoils of war." And Abraham says, "I'm not taking anything from you. not even the thread or the strap of a sandal, so that no one will ever be able to say that the king of Sodom made Abraham rich. I'll accept nothing. So I'm out. I'm out. So there's something in that exchange that Abraham really doesn't like. And he's like, peace out. You can have Sodom. I'm out. I'm not doing anything.
Now, is it something in the exchange, or is it the hand of the exchanger? So this is what I was thinking of when I was talking about the difference between Abraham and Lot before. Because if Abraham valued stuff, right, he could say, now I did just ride in and save y'all. Like if he were dealing with NATO, right, he could say, I invested in my military capability. You guys underinvested. So now it's time to do a trade deal. Yeah, and I expect, right? I expect to be compensated for the protection that I have given to all these kingdoms. So yes, give me all that stuff. You take the people, I will take the stuff. But he says, you know what? No. Either I don't care about that stuff, or I don't want it from you, because God is already.
I'm not sure what it is. It looks like maybe a bit of both, but he's like, I've sworn an oath to Yahweh, and he's like, and I'm not going to accept anything from you. And I think it's because the stories of wickedness had probably already reached his ears, because we already have evidence in the biblical story that the people are wicked. So maybe it's Abraham saying, like, I don't want any dealings with the likes of you. Meanwhile, Melchizedek comes and says, you're blessed by God, the same God that I worship. And they share like this, bread and wine, right? Which is it's almost like a religious service, right?
That exchange works. That exchange works.
Yeah.
Melchizedek doesn't have a problem getting stuff from Abraham, Abraham giving stuff to the king of Salem, to Melchizedek. So, but the exchange with the king of Sodom doesn't work for Abraham. And I think you're right. Some of it maybe has to do with God has already made promises to Abraham. And those, I don't need to get a bunch of stuff from you.
Yeah, I'm taken care of. Yeah.
There's also, to me, an echo of Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness here. Like, hey, shortcut, I'll give you all this stuff.
Oh, man.
Right?
I hadn't thought about that.
If you'll only worship me isn't said by the king of Sodom, but Abraham said, I don't want anybody saying that I got rich from you, which to me suggests.
I don't want us tied.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Abraham's the king of Sodom's guy. He gave him a, no.
Yeah. I don't roll that way. That's interesting, because the temptation in the desert, much later in Matthew 4, is Satan does say, hey, I'll give you all the kingdoms of the world, which is instance of power, authority. You can have, and Jesus is like, nah, I'm Yahweh's guy. You know, I do what my father, that's not how I roll. I bow to no one. So yeah, there could be an allegiance thing here. Yeah, we're not given a ton, but and I wonder if there's anything else in the narrative that's supposed to shed light on how bad the king of Sodom is. I don't think we have a ton, except the little parenthetical line that Sodom and Gomorrah were wicked and sinning greatly against the Lord, and that was in verse 13. 13.
And this is who Lot has aligned himself with. Right? Yeah. Lot lifted up his eyes, saw that area where Sodom and Gomorrah were, and said, that's the place for me. Arguably without consulting or considering God, without thinking about the character of the people who live there, he's like, that looks great. And apparently, Chedorlaomer, the king, also said, that looks great. So all that stuff down there, I'm going to come in and take it. Right? So there's this taking happening, except Abraham says, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to have an effect, but I'm not going to take for myself.
But what's his motivation? Even his motivation is not like the other kings. This looks to be an incredibly wealthy, rich, lush area. And all the scholars and archaeologists say that this was an incredibly wealthy area, lush rivers, et cetera, et cetera. They're going in for the stuff. Why does Abraham move? Why does he motivate his 318 trained men? It's not for stuff.
Well, verse 14, chapter 14, verse 14, when Abram heard that his relative was taken captive, he led out his 318 men born in his house and pursued as far as Dan.
He's trying to get Lot back. Yeah.
It's all for Lot. Like when Abraham said in the beginning, hey, we're family. We're family. Right. That's the most important thing. Forget about all this money stuff. If you go left, I'll go right. It's family. This is like
Vin Diesel. It's Vin Diesel.
Fast and Furious.
Family.
It's like,
we're family.
I don't have friends. I got family. Yeah. So it's like, he's like, okay, you took one of my family. Well, I'm coming after you.
Right.
Right. So
and there's spoils around it. And it's almost like Abraham doesn't even care. But there is a beautiful moment with Melchizedek, the king of Salem. Now, here's also, and this is going to sound political. I do not mean it politically. I want to think theologically, right? Like almost like in ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So what in Genesis, we got to be careful about this kind of stuff. But in Genesis 12, God's promise is, look, whoever blesses you, I'm going to bless. Whoever curses you, I'm going to curse, right? So there's a sense of Abraham being a representative of his Yahweh. So if someone recognizes that Yahweh, it's going to go well for them. And if somebody doesn't, it won't. And so you have this moment where Melchizedek actually blesses him. And I'm not saying the king of Sodom curses him, but he just kind of certainly doesn't care about Yahweh. And he's like, just give me the people, keep the stuff for yourself, right? So then what happens to Sodom as a city? What happens to Jerusalem? Jerusalem is still known as God's city all through the rest of the scriptures, right? And Sodom becomes an ash pile. So there's almost like a choice even within the kings as a metaphor between, are you going to align yourself with the way of Yahweh or the way of Babel, the way of Egypt, the way of evil, the way of wickedness, that kind of thing?
Well, your point taken. I think Melchizedek clearly in verse 19 blesses Abraham, saying, blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. Blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. So both Abraham's blessing is attributed to his following God, and then Melchizedek also blesses, acknowledges God. The king of Sodom, to me, doesn't seem to curse Abraham, but he's saying he doesn't bless him. He doesn't acknowledge God. He's just like,
right,
yeah, all this stuff is for what you did. Here's your payment. I'm going to pay you.
Yeah,
I'm not going to bless you. I'm going to compensate you. And Abraham's like, I'm not here to do a deal.
I'm
not here to negotiate with you. I'm not here to take something out of your hand.
Yeah.
So no, my payment is what my guys ate, while they were fighting, and then I'm good.
It's like humans can act in contracts or they can act in covenants, and covenants have this beautiful layer. It's a legal contract, but there's also a depth of love and care and compassion and unity under, in this case, Yahweh, and those, or you can just treat it like Verizon, you pay me the money and you get a cell phone. You know what I mean?
But there's also I think a lesson here about the way Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that area around Sodom and Gomorrah and picked it for himself. Just one chapter later, not only does it get taken from him by an invading king, it gets offered on a platter to Abraham. So he could have had not just the land that he got left with after Lot said, no, I'm going down there. Abraham could have had his land and Lot's land and everything else around it, right?
Yeah.
But he said,
no,
once again, I'm not here for the stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not about that. About family and covenant.
Yeah. Family, covenant, Yahweh, following him, trusting him, and the protection of Lot. So we're seeing something about Abraham and his character. The daring rescue, right? This is a daring rescue. It reminds me of that time when Will Scarlet is taken by the sheriff of Nottingham. And what does Robin Hood do? He marshals all of his men for a giant rescue mission in the town square.
Mhm.
because and it's stupid and it's dumb and it's really ridiculous to risk all your best men, including your own life, for Will Scarlet. But why does he do it? Because it's Will Scarlet. It's one of his guys, and that's
Mhm.
worth it. And there's something incredibly beautiful about those kinds of stories, because it's like nobody wants to be left behind and everyone wants to be valuable enough to someone to come after. And that's what the narrative of the gospel is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The God comes after people at great personal risk to himself and at great personal cost to himself. And Lot's, in many ways, it looks to me like the narrative is trying to let us know Lot is helpless. Like there's no chance he has unless Abraham intervenes on his behalf as God's representative, right? As God's agent in the world. And so there's that too.
But Lot is greedy, it seems.
It seems.
And on top of that, his values are misplaced.
We're going to see that really keenly later, I think.
Like
Yeah.
what he's doing with the resources he has,
Yeah.
where he chooses to be, how he chooses to position himself, who he's got around him,
Who he chooses to align himself with, like you said. I love what you said, something like, is it the gift that's the problem or the hand of the one who gives the gift? And I there's something deep in there. It's like, look, I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy. We're not friends. We're not tied, just so we're clear. Meanwhile, Melchizedek, Abraham's like, yeah, we're tied by Yahweh. Here's actually almost like an offering. I'm going to give you, I'm going to bless you as you bless me. Like we're in this together. We're tied. Because we're tied by something much bigger than just stuff or greed or conquest, right?
So in this story, we get a contrast between who Abraham is and who Lot is. Not so much through Lot's actions, but through the consequences of Lot's choices, right? We see the area that Lot valued, the resources that Lot valued, the communities and rulers that Lot aligned himself and surrounded himself with.
Yeah.
Just after he makes that choice, we see that choice play out. And we see Abraham once again sort of rejecting that direction that not only did Lot go in, but a place where Lot stays. I guess he could have said, all right, well, maybe this wasn't the best place to be.
Well, yeah, I wonder, John, if there's any tie that we're supposed to make narratively as you're talking, like what just happened to Abraham? He got scared. He went to Egypt. And then who came to rescue him? God came to rescue him, get him out of there, right? So this looks good to me. Egypt looks good. I'm going to go there. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Let's lie because that makes sense. They're going to take you. He knows what's going on. And then he goes there and then God has to come and rescue him. Now, in this case, his little nephew does something similar. He's like, hey, that looks good. This makes sense. Wealth is good. Lush is good. He goes there. Something bad happens. And then Abraham, almost as like God's representative, has to go and rescue him and get him out, right? So there could be some sort of ties to he just saw what God did for him, and now he's going to, as God's representative, reenact that. God had to move supernaturally to release him from Pharaoh, but it was the same kind of thing.
Well, I would argue it's maybe a little different in that
Sure.
Abraham made bad choices, though he had good values.
Yeah.
Lot had bad values.
Yeah. And
arguably made good choices within bad values. I mean, he did choose the place that looked better. That was a good choice, right? Yeah. But his values were off. And it's harder to recover, this seems to me to be saying, from bad values than it is from bad choices, right?
Yeah. No,
that helped Abraham prosper in Egypt, right? It's not like he was kidnapped into Egypt. He went there. He did well. He made some bad choices in how he got there and how he did well, but God got him out of there in part by cursing, Pharaoh and Egypt to get him. So it was like, hey, get out of here and take a bunch of stuff with you as you go. And interestingly, I guess, Abraham took the stuff.
Yeah.
Right. because, and I guess because
He
God
got rich
had said,
because of Egypt.
yes, but
yeah.
not only did he get rich in Egypt, it seems like Pharaoh might have sent him out with a little
Oh, he
extra
did.
to
He did.
go.
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
get out of here.
Yeah.
Which, of course, you're going to tie to Exodus. The same thing happens in Exodus. The
Right.
people leave Egypt with the gold of Egypt. The same thing.
So, yeah, I to me, I go back to that values versus choices. That there's a little bit more understanding, leeway, whatever, and making a bad choice, but having the right values and honoring God with your life and your overall direction, versus if your values are just off, if you're not considering God in where you go and who you surround yourself with, if you're not blessing those who God blesses, if you're not acknowledging God in your victories, etc., like Sodom, the king of Sodom, like Lot. Well, that's so different, from Abraham. Even though he makes some boneheaded choices, he doesn't have the values of,
And we're going to see that we absolutely are out of time. And this is why I thought this might be a part 1, part 2, because what happens next is you're going to see these values brought to a head. And I love what you said, because in Genesis 18, which we'll get to next time, it's very clear that God is all about what's going on in the heart of Abraham and what kind of person he's becoming. Is he going to work with justice and righteousness, or is he going to work toward wickedness? And we're going to see the juxtaposition of this God and Sodom, or Abraham and Sodom, Abraham and Lot. And it's tragic.
Indeed. Lot part 1. This has been a character study. Dave Tieche, Jon Fortt, thanks for being with us.
All right, thanks.
This has been Character Study with Jon Fortt and David Tieche. Download free resources at bible.fortt.com.